I'm not even gonna do a proper intro for this video. I'm gonna just cut right to the chase. Me and my friend Will here.
Yo.
Yeah, this is gonna be a very interesting and also a very long video because we have a lot of routes to cover. And some are worse than others, and some are actually decent. And we're gonna go through each one of them and discuss what our opinions are on every single route. And on the bus redesign as a whole. So,
Like, I haven't. I'm sure you've read through this whole thing. I haven't yet, so these are gonna be my reactions to everything.
right, so I have a pretty good idea of what these routes will mean for the future. He doesn't. So this is gonna be his first-hand reaction to all of this. Right, so the B1 runs between Bay Ridge and Manhattan Beach, which is how it usually runs. Nothing has really been added, nothing has been discontinued. So when we go to the stop list, we have quite a bit of stops removed. And to be honest, good majority of them, literally, I feel like it is best that they do remove them. However, the only kind of problem that I have with this is they keep West 7th Street and West 9th, but they remove West 11th. My thing is, if you're gonna remove one of them, remove West 9th and keep West 7th and West 11th.
Yeah, that makes sense because there's more space.
Right.
Like, why make two stops that are closer together?
Right. It's like it kind of defeats the purpose of removing stops for speed, you know? When, like, 2 blocks apart is not really gonna do anything. Plus, you also have the N train running there at West 8th. You don't need 2 stops there.
You have your subway connection. So you're saying you have your subway connection no matter what?
Exactly. You have a subway connection no matter what you do here. Other than that, the route is fine. I think this actually would help increase speed in the route.
It still has its connection to the Staten Island bus.
It has its connections to the Staten Island routes. It has its connection to the B, Q, F, N, D, and R. So it has a lot of subway connections. And it also has a lot of bus connections, as you can see here. So the next route that is on this redesign is the B3. The B3 essentially runs along Avenue U. It goes between Gravesend and Bergen Beach. Alright, the same thing as the B1, the route path itself doesn't really change at all. It just removes some stops that were unnecessary, and it should make the route faster. The B4 does something a little bit interesting. It will go on Stillwell Avenue, and then turn on Neptune. So, then, after Ocean Parkway, it just goes straight on Neptune Avenue. And this is the part where I have a little bit of an issue, because the section here, I'm gonna zoom into this area. This part here, from Ocean Parkway to the end of the route, has been kept exactly the same. And there may have been some stops that are removed, but the routing is essentially the same thing. If they try to reduce the number of turns, the area that they should have focused on is the Sheepshead Bay area, not necessarily the Gravesend portion.
Because Sheepshead Bay, it literally goes like a loop pretty much.
Right.
Like, if you want to get rid of unnecessary turns, that might be the place to do it.
What it could do is, when it makes the turn to Neptune Avenue, at East 14th, it turns from Neptune Avenue, or either East 14th or Shore Boulevard. I'm not exactly sure which one, if they're even different things. I'm pretty sure they're exactly at the same spot anyway. But I'm going to call it East 14th because that's what it says over here. From East 14th to Knapp Street, it's called Emmons Avenue. And what it could do is one of two things. It could either go straight on Emmons Avenue going eastbound until it hits Knapp Street. And then it could essentially do the same loop that it always does, terminate on that loop, and then go back down through Emmons Avenue. That is one of the two options that it can do. The second option is if the argument that is that Emmons has way too much traffic or not enough space for the route to continuously run there in both directions. Well, here's an interesting idea. How about on Ocean Avenue, make a turn to Shore Parkway instead? Now, the reason I say this is because it already does it going eastbound. If it were to go both ways, it can essentially do a little bit of a hybrid of both Solution 1 and what it's currently doing. Because If it goes on Shore Parkway both ways, it'll essentially do the same thing that it normally does here with the loop. And then, instead of turning to Emmons, it'll just go back onto Shore Parkway. The only problem is that you will have a situation in which both directions will be on the same lane. When it does the loop, and when it's returning, it'll be on the exact same lane. So, ultimately, solution 1, just sending it on Emmons both directions, is the better option. However, if that can't be done, it's essentially going to pull a B11 at Sunset Park, just at Sheepshead Bay instead. It's been done currently in the MTA, and it's even in the redesign. We'll get to the B11 when we do. It's going to be the exact same thing, just slightly rerouted. The idea that it can't run on Ocean Parkway because of too many turns is completely absurd whenever you have this area of Sheepshead Bay that has an abundance of turns.
I was just gonna say, like I said earlier, if they want to get rid of turns, they should consider doing some of the stuff in Sheepshead Bay instead of whatever they're doing now. Because that looks even more of an unnecessary turn than what's over here.
This is like the first route that made me think, wait, something is not right with this redesign. Because it completely neglects the area that has way too many turns and it doesn't work. And I've been on the B4 around Sheepshead Bay. I've done this route, so I can tell you firsthand it does not work well. So now, this is the first completely new route, the B5 Limited.
Is it one of those routes that's only limited?
Yes, it's a limited only route. Here's my only thing though. For the most part, it is essentially the exact same as the B6 Limited. And it instead goes to Gateway Center instead of East New York. That is the only difference between the B5 Limited and the B6 Limited. Frequencies would be similar to the proposed B6 Limited, and buses would be split between the proposed B5 Limited and B6 Limited. Just call it the B6 Limited. Honestly, if you had to make it a distinction, if it follows the B6 Limited essentially route for route, all you have to do is either call it the B6A Limited, or just call it the B6 Limited. That goes to Gateway Center instead of East New York.
What, have it do like a branch thing like some of the express routes do?
Exactly.
Like the Rosebank / Sunnyside or something like that?
Yeah.
Like, obviously not that exact route, but like a similar concept.
Yeah, that exact concept. It's already done with Staten Island, and I don't know, Will, you're the one who's like the expert with Staten Island. Is that something that's confusing enough of a distinction? Is that not enough of one?
No, it's not confusing, assuming the driver actually puts the correct destination up. Like, if it says Sunnyside, but it's going to Rosebank, that sucks if it's to Sim 30. But, I mean, other than that, they're pretty good about it, so that's not confusing.
Have it be a branch. There is no need. Have the same frequency as the B5 Limited and the B6 Limited combined, but just have it be branched. The B6 Local. We have the B6 Local, and then we'll get to the B6 Limited. Now, the only route change on the B6 Local, it removes that loop on Shore Parkway. Again, thank God, that was completely pointless. Now, the route essentially stays the same, except instead of going on Glenwood, it essentially pulls a B103 and turns directly from Flatbush to Avenue H. So the route itself is fine. The B6 Local, I don't really have an issue with it, to be honest. The way that they relocated things makes it more direct, and unlike the B4, they actually do an effective job at removing turns. Because now, instead of having 1, 2, 3 on Glenwood Road to Avenue H, it just makes one turn from Flatbush Avenue to Avenue H. So it does actually effectively decrease turns, and it's also directly going to Cropsey Avenue on both directions. And they also removed some of the unnecessary stops. But yeah, B6 Local is fine. The B6 Limited is where the MTA actually takes a really big W here.
Alright.
Because what they finally do, the biggest dub about the B6 Limited now, is that it finally adds express service to Bay Parkway.
What?
Before this redesign, the B6 Limited and the B6 Local on Bay Parkway would not make any difference. Every single stop that you see is removed now, unless
So
it
it just
would
goes straight down.
it would essentially make every stop as the local. That's what it does currently.
And so they're getting rid of that.
What they're doing now is they're adding limited service to Bay Parkway, and to that I'm saying about time. I don't know why you didn't think of this sooner, MTA, but about time. You actually did something right here. Alright, now we have the B7. Goes from Midwood to Fresh Pond. Now, the B7 is a bit of an interesting route already.
It's gonna be longer than the existing one.
Yes, that's the main thing.
Significantly longer.
It's having a major increase, and it worries me though because every time they do that, they replace a route. And they also did kind of mess up on the map. The loop here is supposed to be on Coney Island Avenue. They kind of messed up there, and the arrow was supposed to be the other way. But rest assured, I thought they removed the service to Coney Island Avenue.
But they didn't.
But they did not. It's still there, based on the stop list, so we're good there. Other than that, essentially the same thing happens. Stops are removed, and there's new service. Now,
Anyway.
the B8. My opinion, the B8 is the most horrendous route of all of Brooklyn.
Let's see what the B8 is, because I've never been on it because you're the Brooklyn expert, so I'll let you explain.
The B8 is a route that goes from Bay Ridge 95th Street, or how it used to run, Bay Ridge 95th Street to Brownsville. The problem with the B8 that I have is that they run buses well, but they group tremendously. In terms of the routing, it's essentially the same. All I can hope for is that because of the redirection, the increased frequency, and the removed stops, that it will be a better route than it currently is. That is the only thing I can hope for. So the B9 here is from Bay Ridge to Kings Plaza. So the route itself doesn't really change.
It just says schedule change.
So the B9 is essentially not that much. It's just slightly improved, which is fine. There's no need to overchange a route. Now we have the B10 Limited.
Never before seen.
This is a new route. It goes from Broadway Junction to Prospect Park. My only thing is, it is so new that I don't know what to think of it right now.
That's a very good point.
This route seems good just because it has connections from the B and Q and the Franklin Avenue shuttle to the 2 and 5, to the 3,
and the J, Z, and the
AC, J, Z, and L. So it has a very wide subway connection, as well as the Long Island Railroad.
Oh yeah, East New York Station.
Right. So, it's a way for people at Prospect Park to get to Broadway Junction.
So for that reason, just as like a preliminary thought, it seems good. Because we haven't actually seen it yet.
However, only time will tell if it actually lives up. I might make a follow-up video to these newer routes whenever the routes actually go into effect. As of now, though, it looks promising, is all I can say. Now we have the B11 local, service between Midwood and Sunset Park. Now, remember how I said the B11 has a situation where both directions end up on the same area. And it's in Sunset Park.
They're making the loop a bit smaller in terms of getting rid of turns, but that's about it.
But the point is on 2nd Avenue, on 56th and 57th and 56th Street, both directions end up going on the same lane. Just take a look at 2nd Avenue here. 57th to 56th. It
57th to 56.
both directions end up going on the same lane. Now, this used to be a lot more prominent than it is now, and they've reduced it significantly. But it does still happen. And now the reason why I bring this up was when we were discussing the B4, I mentioned how the second proposal would result in a situation very similar to this one. If it can be kept with the B11, it can be added to the B4, is essentially why I brought this up.
Mm-hmm.
Other than that, the route doesn't really change much. It just has some removed stops. It also has some reroutes.
It's a 1/10 of a mile shorter.
Yeah, and no really change in frequency. It's, again, the B11 wasn't a route that needed anything significant, so seeing that it's, just a bit better than it was, I don't know why the B10 isn't a proposed connection when it doesn't go where the B10 goes at all. So, now we're on the B12, a route that I'm not familiar with.
So they're increasing weekends, getting rid of weekday, or not getting rid of, but significantly reducing weekday.
Weekday frequencies would be decreased since buses would be split between the proposed B10 and B12.
That makes sense.
And then, other than that, yeah, it's essentially just complementing the B10 Limited. The B13. I'm just gonna get straight into this here.
Bushwick to Gateway Center.
It's rerouted a little bit strangely, and yep. Remember how I said about the B7? Uh-oh, because they're probably cutting something from it.
Mm-hmm.
And here it is. The terminals are the same. It just has a very weird service cut, or redirection, I should say. Frequencies are all increased. I liked what they did in Brooklyn, again, unlike the B4. But the part in Queens, I don't know if Cypress Avenue lacks service currently. If it does, I guess I can kind of understand. But ultimately, I don't know. I can't comment much on it because I haven't taken the route up there, but it seems like they're leaving it to the B7 at this point. Which, the B7 has way too much congestion as it is. I feel like there needs to be some help with it. So, yeah, the B14 is, also they misspelled local here. Nice job. So the only difference is that the terminal on Spring Creek is a little bit different, and by a little bit I mean quite significantly different. I am not exactly sure why they're doing this. I don't know how to feel about this, to be honest with you.
So all they're doing is messing with the Spring Creek section.
This is kind of the B4 argument all over again, but I don't know what the area in Spring Creek is. I don't know if they rerouted it to allow a different route to... They're doing it to increase service to a now accessible station.
I guess they just installed elevators at Euclid or something of the sort.
I don't know. I have mixed opinions on this. This is not like the B4 at all. This is a very different conversation. You can't really compare it to the B4 in terms of the way that the route works. And it's also not as bad as the B4. I actually think it does work in a way. And also gives service on Linden Boulevard. I can't really hate it. It's overall a service increase. And the B15 local. Now the B15, the only gripe I have is the fact that it did cut out to JFK. I feel like it still should. There's not much I can say about the B15, other than that I don't like how it doesn't go to JFK. The B16. Now there are some positives and some negatives to it. The 60th Street. I don't know how to feel. It gives a more direct connection to the N on Fort Hamilton Parkway, but then again, or more so New Utrecht Avenue on the DNN. They completely eliminate the 12th Avenue section. And what they do is they put it to Church Avenue. And then it turns on McDonald Avenue from Church Avenue to Caton Avenue.
You seem bothered by this.
I'm not necessarily bothered, I'm more so confused.
Time will tell, just like for a lot of these.
Now that we have the B17.
I have a lot of questions just about like the facts that they give on here. Like how accurate those are.
Right. It essentially goes straight on Remsen Avenue instead of making a stop at Rockaway Parkway. And then it goes to Seaview Avenue.
That's probably fine. There's only one subway connection on the whole route, but that's probably fine.
Now
Actually, it
it's
goes really close to Canarsie Rockaway Parkway. Like it's what? Wait, no, it doesn't.
it used to.
Yeah, it
That's
used
what they're
to.
getting rid of.
Well, I mean, it still goes somewhat close, but it's just a longer walk.
So it essentially just removes the part-time service. Now here's where I have a little bit of a weird predicament here, and I don't know if you'd agree if you'll agree with me on this. The B20 is a new kind of service called rush service. It adds non-stop sections to routes, except this does not do it well.
I mean, in theory, that's a great idea.
Yes, but the route, they cut such a significant chunk that would actually benefit from rush service. It seems like it's only making stops on major connections in the non-stop section area. I just think it could have been better. Instead of going just from Broadway Junction, you could have continued it a little bit.
I mean, all issues aside, I'm a fan of this rush idea because it actually looks like it could be really good.
Yeah, then there are routes that do it justice. Alright, now we have the B25. Now, in terms of the route, nothing changes. It goes
Yeah,
from the Dumbo area to Broadway Junction via Fulton Street.
the redesign is absolutely identical to the current route.
Just removes a bit of stops. It's essentially the local C train. I don't know.
It's literally a C train service.
It's a C train that makes extra stops.
Didn't even think such a thing would be possible. Oh, we got more rush service on the 26th.
Yeah, that's what I'm gonna get to now. B26 Rush, and this is a rush service that is done right, as it has removed turns, but it essentially does the same thing, and it also actually showcases the B25. Now it goes on Fulton Street, but then it does its own thing. And the non-stop section on Fulton Street is really intriguing to me because it's essentially the C with one extra stop for the G train to connect. And also Nevin Street. Stops along Halsey Street would be spaced slightly farther apart than existing, while stops along Fulton Street would only be located at key destinations and major transfer points. Hey, MTA, I'm gonna get to this later in more detail. This is what you should have done with the B103. We'll get to that. While stops along Fulton Street would only be located at key destinations and major transfer points. However, overnight when the proposed B25 would terminate at Franklin Avenue, the proposed B26 would make all stops between Franklin Avenue and downtown Brooklyn. So essentially, it's saying that the non-stop part from Franklin Avenue to downtown Brooklyn. So the rush part, from what I'm understanding, the non-stop section does not run on overnights. It would be local.
It's not like anyone's going to be rushing to Brooklyn during the night anyway.
But I do like the idea of the rush service.
I do too. Like, honestly, that's
And
actually a
this-
really good idea.
This is a route that does it well. Now, the B27. This is a new route, so I can't say much about it currently.
It's a new route, so
It's completely new. It goes from Red Hook to essentially York Street. It says Vinegar Hill. It has potential, yes. But then again, it covers a very small area. If you look on the general map, it covers like the little breakaway point. It looks promising, with 17 going northbound, 20 stops going southbound.
not too bad.
Doesn't seem like a bad idea, especially since it connects to J Street, to Smith Street, and it goes to Red Hook, which, to be honest, actually
Doesn't
seems
sound
like
half
it
bad.
doesn't sound that bad. But then again, only time will tell if it actually wants to do its thing.
B31 looks, other than stops changing, looks exactly the same.
Yeah, the B31, there's not much to talk about. Frequency stays the same, and it just does the exact same thing, and it only removes some unnecessary stops. Not much to talk about with the B31. The B35. B35. Now, I have a little bit of a thing to say about this. Is that finally, the B35 local permanently goes to Sunset Park. About time. Other than that, the route is exactly the same. Just some removed stops.
Is there still going to be a 35 limited, or is it just going to go the exact same way?
No, the B35 Limited is no longer a thing. It's gonna be the
So that's
B55.
why they have. So that's why the local goes to Sunset Park now.
Right, but now there's a B55, which we'll discuss later. So we have B36. Service between Coney Island Seagate and Sheepshead Bay. I just want to start off by saying I actually love this route, as it already stands.
I mean, I've had to wait a long time for it in the hot sun at Coney Island, but other than that, it seems like a good route.
I really like this route. And, okay, so the B36 does continue service on Ocean Parkway. So, okay. I guess the B4... I don't...
Looks like it stays mostly the same on the map, though.
Yeah, the route stays the same, it just has some stops removed. Which, again, some of those stops really did not need to be there in the first place. Like, East 12th and East 13th did not need to be there. So, it's essentially just a better version of the B36. Just some increased stop spacing. So, it's a route that's already good, and it's just made slightly better with the average change that all routes have at this point. B37. This one is going to have a little bit of controversy, only because of the fact that the MTA expects it to replace the B103. The B38 local. It's essentially the G train, in a way,
So it's basically
before it goes up.
So they're basically making a more useful version of the Queen section.
Yeah, that's essentially all it does.
It has a connection to the M, or another M train a more direct M train connection, and it goes to a place where there's more bus connections as well to Queens routes. So you've got the B13, the Q58. That might actually work.
And it removes a decent chunk of stops, too.
Like, what's the point of looping around whatever this park is supposed to be?
I really don't know. It does say the B57 is going to do it anyway, so...
Well, yes, but...
But actually, no.
No, I was going to say, well, yes, but no one cares about the 57. I like the 38.
Alright. B39 is literally exactly the same.
They're not even removing stops.
Nothing about it has changed.
The route improvements is that it's an interborough route, but it's already an interborough route.
We have another rush route here, which is the B40. Essentially...
It's new entirely.
Yes. But it's essentially the B41 to Bergen Beach, except it doesn't even go all the way to downtown Brooklyn.
Oh, that's a long express section.
My only problem with it is make it go to downtown Brooklyn. Or at least Atlantic. At least Atlantic.
Yeah, you can always benefit from an LIRR connection, so why not?
Right. What's wrong with sending it up there? You have the perfect opportunity to haul on Prospect Park, and you can literally make it so that it's Grand Army Plaza, 7th Avenue, Bergen Street, and then Atlantic. You don't even have to make it go all the way up to Cabin Plaza, just get it to an LIRR connection and a major bus, area.
Oh yeah, there's a lot of buses around there as well.
Other than that, though, it sounds like a really good idea.
Just a missed opportunity in terms of extending it to
Look,
Atlantic.
it goes from Bergen Beach to Prospect Park in 12 stops. It can go to Atlantic in 16. Is my point.
It really could.
Now, the actual B41 is having decreased service, apparently.
It still goes to Atlantic, so it still has its LIRR connection.
Right, but it doesn't go all the way to Cadman Plaza, which is, I guess, fine. I don't really care about that.
So basically parallels the B40 Rush for a while.
Yeah, the B40 Rush used to be the B41 as like a branch of the B41. I think the reason why they did this is because they want to introduce the B41 SBS.
What?
Right? The B41 Select bus service would replace the B41 Limited.
Oh, that's why it says XT under all these connections. It says B41 XT, that means crosstown.
And it's essentially...
They're just now implementing it, and they're already decreasing service on a new route.
If you take a look, it goes from Kings Plaza to Atlantic in 11 stops.
The 41?
The 41 Select.
The 41 SBS, yeah. I'm looking at it right now.
The 40 could go from Bergen Beach, which has a bit more routing, in 16. I don't see why the MTA would want people to transfer at Prospect Park for the BQ or B41 crosstown. I personally, if I was in this predicament, I would rather have a direct service from Bergen Beach to downtown Brooklyn.
to downtown Brooklyn. Yeah,
The B42,
it's the exact same.
it's literally trash. What
This
is
just
the
goes
point?
on wrong. It goes from the L to wherever the hell that's supposed to be.
I don't even know. I personally don't know why this route exists in the first place.
And I don't care about it
And
anyway.
yeah, nor do I want to find out. Alright, B43. Our first Greenpoint route. Greenpoint and Prospect Lefferts Gardens. Now, all it does, the only service change is that it goes on Albany Avenue going southbound. That's it. The only change, and also just...
And they're just cutting Tompkins entirely.
Yeah. Who knows, maybe that is a good idea, I don't know. They're also adding a little bit of a flag, it looks like, to Greenpoint. It looks like a flag now. The terminal. And Greenpoint Avenue is supposed to be a accessible station now, that's interesting. Or it's...
How accurate are these accessible labels?
I know Church Avenue was planned for the B&Q. I know Sheepshead Bay was planned for the B&Q. They're not in effect right now. I think because of COVID they were delayed, but I know that they are planned. So in a way, it's semi-accurate, I can imagine.
Got it.
B44 local.
Oh, this is the one you were telling me about. That's absolutely stupid, right?
No, that's the select. This is the local here.
Oh.
Right? The local, the only difference is that it goes up Rogers instead of New York Avenue, and then to Rogers, so it is better. It's just a straight line instead of whatever it used to be. So I guess other than that, it's improved. The route is essentially the same thing. But it doesn't go to Williamsburg. It just goes to Bed-Stuy.
This one never did go to Williamsburg, though, did it? That was always a select.
That was always a select, so nothing changed there either. The route length is 0.1 miles shorter, probably because of that service change. Nothing special about this. Remove some stops that probably should have been removed. Now the select. Here we go. This is where your rant mode might have to come out.
We'll see about that.
The difference in this route is instead of
sending it on Avenue Z
to Ocean Parkway. This would provide a new connection to the future accessible Sheepshead Bay B&Q station, and additional service to Coney Island Hospital.
Well, I mean, that kind of makes sense since they're getting rid of one of the routes that used to stop at the hospital, so I'm gonna give them the benefit of the doubt real quick. There might be a use for that.
The connection thing only works for people that live on Avenue Z. However, the B36 already does that. As a matter of fact, the B36 already goes all the way to Ocean Parkway from Nostrand Avenue. It's essentially, that section is a B36 limited. Or select, I should say. However, it goes Nostrand Avenue, Avenue X, and then Avenue Z and Ocean Avenue. Now, if somebody lived on Nostrand and wanted to get a bus to the station, why on earth would they make the walk to Ocean Avenue?
I have no idea.
And then take a bus. Unless you live on Avenue X or near it, you don't benefit from this at all. All you see is cut service at that point, because you only have a local. It's a pointless reroute. The B45 is service between downtown Brooklyn and Bedford-Stuyvesant. Now, nothing really changes, except for the fact that it, in a good way, it has a direct connection to the C train on Ralph Avenue. I think that's better than to have it loop, like, out of nowhere.
It does look like they made some improvements in terms of just where the dashed lines are placed.
Right. And it does look like that's a new connection, which I actually think it is a pretty good one, because you have the C train, and you also have the B25. So, it's pretty good. Not much else I could say about it. It's pretty good.
Yes, I can agree with.
The B46, the Kings Plaza route via Utica Avenue. Now no longer goes to Williamsburg Bridge Plaza, instead it only goes to Flushing Avenue. on the J and M. I don't know. How do you feel about that one?
Did it ever go to the Plaza bus to the Williamsburg Bridge Plaza?
The B46, yes.
Mhm. Oh, really? I didn't even.
That's why it's a dashed line, because it doesn't do that
Oh,
anymore.
I didn't even. I forgot it even did that.
So maybe maybe it was actually pointless.
Going to be a new route to replace it on this on the Section 2 Williamsburg.
Right, now the B46 Select hasn't really changed, but I also notice it does look
They're
a bit
adding more midday
incomplete.
service, but that's about it.
Yeah, and they're not even removing any stops. They're just increasing a little bit of midday service. B47. This is another Kings Plaza route. We have 3 Kings Plaza routes in a row.
I mean, we did say that
Now,
Kings Plaza is probably one of the biggest places to like switch buses, except for like downtown Brooklyn or Williamsburg Bridge or something like that.
right. And then, so we have, instead of going through, there's not much of a change here. It just goes on Kings Highway instead, and it also removes stops. Nothing really special about this. The B48. Between Flatbush and downtown
And
Brooklyn.
downtown. Looks like all they're really doing is getting rid of service, is reducing the service hours.
And they're also getting rid of service to Greenpoint.
So now it's I was just gonna say, like, aren't Flatbush and downtown Brooklyn like right there?
And
And as expected, it's a
what are they
ridiculous.
doing?
Just after hearing that, as expected, it's a ridiculously short route.
You mean to tell me the B48 is not going to go to the Church Avenue station? It's going to
Pretty
loop
much.
around Church Avenue.
Oh wait, I didn't see that because the line is literally the same color as the park.
It's literally going to the Church Avenue B&Q station, which I don't know how to feel about. It seems weird because it's going to loop on like East 16th Street or East 17th. I don't know which one. And Ocean Avenue. It's a bit weird. I don't
That is
hate it.
weird.
I don't hate it. It just does not. It seems a bit out of place, especially if it's going to add congestion to the B35 and B55. It's a little strange, but I also can't say I hate it either, just because I don't know. We'll just have to see what happens in that regard. B49. This one is a very interesting one because it essentially goes there's the northbound part. Let's start with that. Northbound part, they just put it on Nostrand and New York Avenue. Now there is only one little dilemma. The fact that it was redirected from Manhattan Beach to Coney Island Stillwell Avenue.
Are they gonna run that into the Stillwell bus loop?
Yes, that's what it looks like to me.
Why? Is that a good thing? I can't even tell.
It's possible that they did it because they wanted a way to get rid of the thing that they left the B4 in. Here's just the tiniest little problem with that. You can still have it go to Manhattan Beach through good old Emmons Avenue. Or if it went on Coney Island Avenue and instead went to Oriental Boulevard, because you would have Sheepshead Bay, Brighton Beach, Manhattan Beach. See where I'm getting at here?
Mm-hmm.
Instead of something that the B68 should be doing. We'll get to why I mentioned this later, when we cover the B68.
Sounds
Now,
good.
the B52. B52, about the same. It just goes on Fulton Street a little bit longer, and it removes some turns. It makes it a little bit more direct, so I guess that makes more sense here. B53, Broadway Junction to Sunnyside. And now this is another new route.
Sunnyside, Queens.
Yes.
Interesting.
I don't know. I kind of like it.
I kind of like that idea as well.
It has very good potential. For Broadway Junction, essentially, the only thing I don't really like is the fact that it goes essentially the same way as the J and Z does. But I also don't mind that either.
It goes to Greenpoint, which is cool. Because they cut one of the routes from there.
Right. So it goes to Greenpoint, specifically more so Greenpoint Avenue, and then it continues on Greenpoint Avenue until Queens Boulevard.
Wouldn't it make more sense to have it go to Hunters Point and have like an LIRR connection?
Yeah, but that already exists.
Oh, right. I forgot about that.
Actually looks like it's going to replace the B24. Because that's what the B24 is currently doing. Now that I think about it, a lot of routes go to Greenpoint. B53 has a good potential. I actually kind of dig the idea. B54.
Just goes straight shut down Myrtle Avenue.
Yeah, it's essentially just Myrtle Avenue, removing some stops, not much to it. Alright, B55 SBS. This is gonna be interesting because this is the thing I've been advocating for so long. B55 or
JFK.
I was advocating for a select route on Church Avenue. It's been needed for so long now.
Are you getting your wish? Yes, you are.
Yes, but at what cost? Now,
At the cost of the B-15 no longer going to the airport.
right, that's one thing. However, the other thing I'm concerned about is the fact that it's called the B55. Same thing with the B5. I think it should just be the B35 Select.
I mean, it doesn't go to Sunset Park, but I mean, still.
Yeah, it's essentially the local, how we used to just terminate at McDonald Avenue, but it's not local anymore. 24 stops. It takes you from Church Avenue, McDonald Avenue to JFK Airport. It's a pretty good route. I just don't understand the name. It's a very interesting route. I do like it. B57. We're about 2/3 of the way at this point. The B57 has a very interesting thing. It doesn't go to Red Hook anymore.
They're getting rid of turns, but they're extending the route. They're getting rid of late evening service, but no one gives a crap about that, especially on the weekends.
And then also, it just seems like they just cut out Red Hook. Why not keep that?
Exactly.
Keep Red Hook. Like, what's the point? I understand the B20, the B27,
The whole reason
right?
I ride the B57 is because it's a convenient way to get to the IKEA store.
Right. The 27 doesn't go to Queens. It would be very helpful to still have the 57 go to Red Hook and to have a connection from Jackson Heights Roosevelt Avenue to the IKEA terminal.
A connection from like Red Hook to Queens makes total sense, especially for stoppers. Like those are the ones I'm thinking of in this case.
Right. The connection from the IKEA terminal to Queens
Precisely.
would be perfect. But they just decided to get rid of it. But then again, this isn't the worst change.
So this is, but I still consider this an L moment nonetheless.
Yes, for
Like
sure.
we talked about a W earlier. This is an L.
Alright, so we are on the B60 local. This route serves between Canarsie and Broadway Junction. Related routes are over here. The B60, B5, B6 Limited, B66, and B76. Alright, so if we take a look at the route profile here, the route is essentially cut in half, and it just makes a new turn to Broadway Junction. Service between Rockaway Avenue and the Williamsburg Bridge would be proposed by the B66, which we haven't gotten to yet.
Half. That's absolutely insane.
The route's being split in half, which is not a good thing, but it's being proposed by the B66. I don't understand the point of that route. I mean, we'll get to that. We'll get to it. But other than that, like, the Glenwood Road turn is cut, which, yeah, keep them all on flatlands. Other than that, there's not much I can say about it, but I don't like how it's, like, half the route is essentially cut. Well, now we have the B61, which is a route I've used to take all the time. In terms of the route, it's essentially stayed nearly the same, except there's, like, one less turn in the Red Hook area. And it also goes from Park Circle instead of Windsor Terrace. And I honestly think that this is fine. It still maintains its normal route for the most part. Apparently, the B62 is now going to be limited. It's going to be a limited route, and it's going to go all the way up to Astoria. It used to go only to Long Island City, and now it's going to go all the way up to Astoria.
Doesn't look like there's much up there, but I mean, if it's going there, I mean, why not?
Yeah, it also has a bunch of rerouting. It's now going on a different avenue in Greenpoint, which I mean it makes sense because like just keep it all up there because it's a direct ride to the bridge and it's not that big of a walking distance. Then it goes on Flushing Avenue instead of Park Avenue. And it makes a whole bunch of weird reroutes here. I mean, there's not much I can really say about it. It's okay for those going from, you know, like downtown Brooklyn to Queens, now you have a longer section.
Mm-hmm.
And instead of going to Queens Plaza, it goes to Astoria. The B63. This route has essentially nothing with route changes.
It says
The
that all they're
route,
doing is taking a few stops out. Other than that, it's like exactly the same as it once was.
the 64 between Sunset Park and Coney Island is, yeah, it's a bit different because now it no longer goes to Bay Ridge. It no longer does that little area, that little service thing on Shore Road. It now goes up to Sunset Park with the B11. Oh yeah, it also connects to an NYU hospital, so it's alright. I mean, okay, the B65. This goes between downtown Brooklyn and Crown Heights, and it has a pretty decent change to it. Instead of making a whole bunch of turns, it just stays on Atlantic Avenue. I actually think that's a pretty good idea, just because you get to essentially not have this, like, one side or the other for as long as you initially did. The rest of the route is essentially the same, it just cuts off a little, it just makes the loop a little bit shorter at the end here. Other than that, there's not much to say on the B65, I mean, it does what it has to do. Not much really changes to it. Yeah, okay, so now the B66. This is the new route.
This sounds kind of like the J with extra steps, but I mean, you know.
Yeah, except it also goes on Wilson Avenue. Remember the other route, the B60, I believe?
Uh-huh.
That had that part cut out. This is essentially just that. It's essentially the B60 with the continuation of the B60. I don't know why they couldn't have just kept the B60 going. I don't know why they need to add a B66. But I guess only time will tell when it comes to this. There's one new stop, so who knows? B67, this was one of my home routes. So we're gonna have a little bit of maybe a little bit of a bias. Okay, so now it just goes on... It just goes up to York Street, essentially. But other than that, it's exactly the same. I mean, there's not much I can say about this. It's fine. The B68. So... This is another very interesting route change here, because for the most part it's exactly the same, which is not a good thing for the B68. It does have some decreased service, which again, I don't know why. But the other thing is that it goes to Kingsborough in Manhattan Beach instead of Coney Island. Again, I don't think it's necessary. I don't see why put it to Manhattan Beach and why put the B49 to Coney Island. It's just going to cause more confusion, if anything. I don't know. I can't even comment on it because I just don't see why. Like, it doesn't do anything. Yeah, I just don't get it. And most of the stops are being kept, by the way. Also, I just find it funny that, like, they're removing the Turner Place stop whenever they added it not too long ago.
I know.
It wasn't there until recently because there was a school there, and now they're just removing it anyway. Shouldn't have added it in the first place. Okay, the B69. This is where one of my home routes gets cut off, because now, instead of going down to Curtelli Road, it just starts on Windsor Terrace. And it goes... Somehow, this is another thing I don't understand. It goes through the Grand Army Plaza loop, and then goes back up. And that's something it's always done, and they decided that there's nothing wrong with doing that.
It looks like such an easy fix here, yet they kept the loop.
They just kept the loop, and then instead of going to York Street, which is where it normally goes, it just decides to go to Greenpoint. But it's not even a reliable point in Greenpoint because it just goes via Nassau Avenue. Like, I don't know who asked for that.
I mean, someone probably did, but I mean, I don't know who would do that.
I mean, yeah, there is probably somebody that did, but, like, I don't know. Just does not make much sense to me. Now, the B70. The B70 is essentially staying mostly the same. It just goes a little bit up on 3rd Avenue now, instead of 39th Street. I don't see why. It doesn't really make any difference. It's still the same route, regardless. It really doesn't make any sense. They're just increased midday service on weekdays. Time will tell whether this little change is good or not. To be honest, it doesn't really matter that much. Alright, now the B76 is we have another new route here. I actually thought, for some reason, I thought the B76 actually existed before, but I guess not. And it goes from Broadway Junction to Canarsie. They couldn't do anything to replace the B42, but then they add this route, which it looks fine, to be honest with you. It's just weird. Like, why not replace the B42? Like that route doesn't make any sense. Why keep it? the B81, and I'm feeling really good about this one because
Oh, another new one. All right.
we have another new route,
I keep
and
thinking like, doesn't this already exist? But then I keep seeing it's new.
now
Like I guess
this
the numbers.
this is something else because this is essentially a revived B23. Which, if you don't know, the
Oh,
B23 used to run from Flatbush Avenue to New Utrecht Avenue. And what they did with it, and it ran on Cortellia Road. And what they're doing with it now is they're bringing it from Flatbush Avenue, Brooklyn College, up to Red Hook.
oh,
Which I honestly dig that, right? So it goes through Cortellia Road, and it stays on Cortellia Road up until McDonald Avenue, and then it goes up where the B69 used to be. And then it goes where the B61 terminal used to be, and then essentially follows the 61 to Red Hook.
that actually sounds kind of cool. Not gonna lie.
No, that sounds like a pretty good route. I really don't have much to say about it. It actually looks like it would work. So we're gonna go backwards a little bit.
Did you just skip to 74?
Yeah, I accidentally put it on the wrong tab.
What is this?
But the B74 does not change.
It looks really short anyway.
Yeah, the B74 was always short. There's just some removed stops now. Okay, so we're gonna talk about the B82 local now. B82 local. Now, it now does the stupid, unnecessary loop on Shore Parkway that the B6 didn't do before.
Wait, they're not having it go to Coney anymore?
Nope, that's why they sent the B64 on Cropsey Avenue. I really don't see the point of this loop. Like, who benefits from it? And then, okay, so then it does what the Select used to do and go on Avenue K, and then take Flatlands all the way down to Spring Creek. So the route is mostly the same, just some stops removed. Now, the Select doesn't do the loop, thank God, and is essentially the same thing with just literally 3 removed stops in both directions. Alright, now we have the B83. So the B83 between Broadway Junction and Gateway Center. A lot of routes are coming out of Broadway Junction, if that's like a thing I've noticed. But all it does is essentially go straight down Pennsylvania Avenue. Yeah, so B83 is just like, they just added a little shortcut to it. Alright, the B100. Now, the reason why they removed the B2, and to be honest, thank God, was because the B100 is now rerouted. Instead of going on Quentin Road, going up to Kings Highway, and then going back on Quentin Road as a loop, it now goes on Avenue R, and then loops on Quentin. It's essentially what the B2 used to do, and what the B31 is currently doing. And then it spends less time on Garrettson, goes to Fillmore Avenue, and then it does the exact same thing it used to do. And it removes quite a bit of stops. Honestly, I kind of, I don't know how to feel about the Kings Highway section being removed, because it was always fun to just deadhead down there. But I guess I understand why it was removed. Yeah, that's really all I could say about that.
Even though that section was removed, it still has the Kings Highway subway connection, right? Yeah, it does. I see it.
It does, yeah, because it's still, essentially it does what the B2 and B31 are doing now, instead of what the B100 is doing now. Now, this is
what you told me about. I know you were about to be pissed. It's the B102.
This is the thing that made me hate this redesign in the beginning. The B103 Limited. From East New York to Midwood.
You sound speechless.
Just take a look at this map real quick.
But I saw it. They cut like the entire part once it gets like they cut the entire downtown Brooklyn part.
Yep.
They cut the Prospect Expressway. Like, what is wrong with them?
They cut such an important part of the route. And no, the B81 or B37 is not going to replace this. You're not going to be able to replace the expressway part. Ever. And it went on that expressway for a while. And okay, here's how to improve this. I'm trying not to be actually, I'm not trying to be agitated right now, but this kind of pisses me off a little bit.
Mm-hmm. You're telling me.
Okay, what it could do, here's an idea, MTA. How about from the Brooklyn College area to the downtown Brooklyn area, have it be the rush service.
No.
So here's what you do. Brooklyn College, and then Cortellia Road Station, and then Coney Island and Beverly, because it has, like, express bus connections, plus Beverly Road train station. And then, Church Avenue, Ocean Parkway. Take the expressway all the way, and keep both directions at 4th Avenue. So 9th Street, Union Street, Atlantic, and then do the downtown Brooklyn section like normal. That way, you have, like, a actual good rush service. Because all of this is now gone. Everything from...
Literally half the route is gone. This is one of the worst decisions they've ever made.
Yeah. I like the East New York extension that they added. But you just neglect every area you just cut. Like, the B81 to the B37 is not going to replace the Prospect Expressway section. It's not going to replace 4th Avenue. And it's definitely not going to replace the downtown Brooklyn part.
That's exactly right.
Right? Those who don't live near the 41 can't just take the 41 to downtown Brooklyn. That's why the B103 is kind of taking a different route. But it literally just decides, yeah, no, let's just cut it. Could have made it a rush. A limited rush service does not sound bad. But for some reason, they just don't want to do it. You're going to reduce ridership. Oh, not necessarily reduce ridership, because the B103 in that area that it's still running is still very packed, but you're going to lose ridership for people going west of that.
The 41 is going to be slower, and it's not going to replace the expressway. I guarantee you that.
Exactly.
This is probably the most stupid part of this entire redesign right here.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, like, everything I just mentioned would be passable if it wasn't for this. So, that's the local routes for Brooklyn Bus Redesign. See you for the express part, where we talk about all the express routes.